The soft murmur of conversation floated through the classroom as students filed in, settling into their seats with an air of casual indifference that came with familiarity. Backpacks thudded against the linoleum floor, and the occasional shuffling of notebook pages fluttered as someone hurriedly attempted a last-minute review. Overhead, the fluorescent lights emitted a faint buzz, flickering for half a second before stabilizing into their usual pale glare, casting a washed-out glow over the rows of desks. At the front of the room stood Mr. Callahan, already there, stiffly positioned behind his desk, flipping through a stack of papers with a distracted demeanor. The whiteboard behind him shone too brightly under the artificial lights, its surface wiped clean and poised for use. In the farthest row by the window sat Evelyn, always claiming that spot, positioned close enough to the glass that the soft autumn sunlight could spill through the dusty panes and pool across her desk. The faint shadows from the trees outside danced across her notebooks, their patterns shifting with every lazy breeze. She enjoyed being by the window. It allowed her to drift away and let her thoughts wander beyond the walls of the classroom. It made it easier to remain invisible, which was precisely how Evelyn preferred it. It wasn't that Evelyn lacked capability, quite the opposite. In fact, she had learned early on that remaining quiet and small meant facing fewer obstacles. It meant that no one underestimated her, because they weren't even paying attention to her in the first place. Unlike some of her classmates, Ben was ever eager to answer before Mr. Callahan even finished posing a question. His hand shot up, his voice brimming with a self-assuredness that made Evelyn's stomach twist. Then there was Claire, able to recite entire lines of code as if they were song lyrics she had memorized back in middle school. Mr. Callahan favored them, often calling on them, smiling in that tight, approving way of his, as if they were evidence of his own competence. Evelyn existed in the margins not out of necessity, but because it was easier. Being overlooked felt safer. When she was younger, teachers would often look straight through her, and when they didn't notice her, it was usually in a tone of polite disappointment, as if they were already convinced she would measure up. Too quiet, they said, too withdrawn, too different. She learned not to contest it. Mr. Callahan was no different. His eyes slid past her during class discussions, and on the rare occasions he did call on her, his voice carried a brittle edge, as if he braced himself for her to fail. Most days, she didn't mind, and that day began like any other. Mr. Callahan cleared his throat and started writing on the whiteboard, outlining the logic of their next assignment through a few lines of pseudocode. It was a debugging challenge. He explained, identify the flaws in a pre-written program and fix them. It seemed simple on the surface, but it was deceptively tricky. He glanced at Ben and Claire as he spoke, as if expecting one of them to have the answer before anyone else even began. Evelyn didn't write anything down. She didn't need to. The errors were glaringly obvious the moment she glanced at the code: redundant loops, misplaced conditions, an improperly initialized variable leading to infinite recursion. It wasn't subtle at all, yet she didn't raise her hand. She never did. 2 rows ahead, Ben and Claire were already whispering strategies and ideas to each other, desperately eager to be the first to crack it. Mr. Callahan drifted through the rows of desks, occasionally glancing over shoulders, offering thin smiles or sharp comments. He passed Evelyn without a glance. As usual, she redirected her gaze back toward the window, observing the wind stirring the branches outside. Autumn was creeping in slowly this year. The leaves retained a predominantly green hue, but hints of gold lurked at the edges. Outside, it was quiet, serene. Then everything shifted. She sensed it before she saw it, the weight of attention settling over her like a heavy coat. Mr. Callahan paused by her desk for an extended moment. Neither of them spoke. His gaze flicked downward, and only then did Evelyn realize she had been absent-mindedly writing in her notebook, making notes on the faulty code while her thoughts drifted. She snapped it shut quickly, But it was too late. He had seen. A slow smile creased Mr. Callahan's lips. And it wasn't kind. It suggested he had just unearthed something he found amusing. Not in a pleasant way, without saying a word. He moved on. But the lingering prick of unease that ran down Evelyn's spine remained. She convinced herself she was imagining things, that it was nothing. But deep down, she understood that she had spent years perfecting invisibility. And Mr. Callahan, noticing her, wasn't nothing. The class continued as if nothing had transpired, as if the air hadn't grown, heavier than it had been before. Once he reached the conclusion of his explanation, Mr. Callahan gave them their instructions. 30 minutes to solve the problem. With extra credit for the first correct answer. They were allowed to work alone or in pairs. The room buzzed with the clicks and clatters of keyboards as students dived in. Evelyn remained still. She didn't need to move, for she already had the solution. Instead, she allowed her fingers to drum quietly against the edge of her desk. Watching rather than acting, Ben muttered curses under his breath as he hit yet another error message, while Claire's fingers danced over a keyboard as she rewrote chunks of code. Mr. Callahan observed the chaos with thinly veiled amusement, and then he turned his gaze to Evelyn again. He stopped at her desk, arms crossed over his chest, his gaze sharp and piercing. "Not even going to try?" he asked in a low voice. She didn't respond. "I see," he murmured, his smile widening just enough to sting. Some people are better suited for simpler tasks. Not everyone is cut out for this type of thinking. His words were soft yet sharp enough to draw the attention of a few nearby students. Ben and Claire exchanged looks that conveyed half pity and half contempt. Keeping her head down, Evelyn felt her pulse thud in her ears, not from embarrassment, but something colder, something that settled deep within her bones. Anger. She recognized exactly what Mr. Callahan was attempting. He wished for her to break, to prove him right. And in his mind, he had already won. But he hadn't anticipated her outperforming his favorites. He hadn't expected her to matter. After a moment, he turned away, already dismissing her. 10 more minutes, he announced to the class. Evelyn stared at her screen. The solution was right there. She could rectify it in seconds. And for the first time, she wondered what it might feel like to do just that. The final moments of class elongated, taut as a wire, tension humming throughout the room, frustration mounted, and no one had yet solved the problem. Then Evelyn made her move. She straightened in her seat, placed her fingers on the keyboard, and typed. It took her just 20 seconds. The code unfolded fluidly beneath her fingers as she corrected the loop, optimized the recursive call, and adjusted the conditionals. The program executed flawlessly. She remained silent. She didn't need to say anything. The instant her screen flashed with the correct output, it felt as if someone had pressed pause on the entire room. Ben froze, his hands suspended over his keyboard, and Claire's eyes widened behind her glasses. Mr. Callahan's head snapped up, his expression momentarily cracking. Then, he crossed the room in steady, deliberate steps, leaning over her desk to scrutinize her code, his jaw tense. "Interesting," he remarked. But something was strained in his tone. He reached over, tapping the key to run the program again, and it executed perfectly. Silence enveloped the room. It wasn't the usual quiet of students awaiting instructions, but rather a shocked, breathless hush. And something had shifted. Mr. Callahan straightened, his face blank. "Class dismissed," he said curtly. Chairs scraped, backpacks zipped, and murmurs rippled through the room as students filed out. But Evelyn remained in her seat. She knew what lay ahead. As the door clicked shut behind the last student, Mr. Callahan turned back to her. "Stay for a moment," he instructed. She didn't react, sitting still as he traversed the space between them, his expression carefully neutral. "You've been holding back," he finally stated. She did not respond. He regarded her as if she were something new, something unexpected, uncertain whether to be impressed or annoyed. Tomorrow, he said, you're going to demonstrate what you can truly do. It wasn't a request. She met his gaze. Not immediately. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel invisible.